Okay. Hello everybody. This is Ryan again. Just wanted to do something a little different. This will be a creative breakdown of my film Continuum. So stay tuned to hear a bit about how I made the film, what my influences were, and some behind the scenes. So let's jump into it. Okay. Just so I let that play out all the way through there to the glitch effect. Some things I noticed when I was re-editing it that I thought was interesting was there was some screen tearing. If you look closely at the video, should be like down. I'm looking at my camera, which means it'll be to my left, I think. Should be over here somewhere. There was some screen tearing with, I think it has to do with the light exposure for the camera because I was shooting at 120 frames a second. It trying to expose for the light through the vertical slats, I think may have something to do with it. I thought originally it was the masking I did for the title as I passed through the center of the frame, but I think it was just something in the actual recording process. If you look closely, let me see. I'm actually going in blind. So if you see like there, my nose right there, that's a good example. My nose is like, it doesn't line up correctly because of how the video is recording for whatever reason. Some influences I'm bringing in here right from the start, actually in the title. The green is actually The Matrix. It's one of my favorite movies, and it's just the vibe I kind of wanted to capture. One of the vibes I wanted to capture. Something like synthetic and otherworldly is something that I kind of wanted to dive into a little bit. So on to the next shot. This is another, oh wow, skip to the next shot already. One of the things I wanted to bring in was I wanted to work with symmetry a lot more. So when I was shooting in my apartment, first thing that was on the list was like try and make shots very symmetrical, use like an abundance of shapes, and bring in more color or more like recognizable color to each frame, were like the three goals that I wanted to do to try and just make each part of it look a little different. This one obviously is like a hotter palette or like an orange. What I wanted to do was to make the viewer feel uneasy. There were a lot of emotions I was experiencing when trying to create this film and why it was created in the first place. I actually thought of the idea when I was rolling silverware at Cracker Barrel, because I was very depressed and it was very difficult for me to try and make something creative at that point in time. So I thought I would try and capture the feelings of loneliness and isolation, and just try and bring to the viewer the type of mindset I was feeling, which also dealt with a sense of timelessness, like I was a man out of time, which also, you know, happens with depression. You lose kind of your sense of normalcy, your sense of rhythm. So I wanted to kind of bring that, and it's also why this doesn't have a straightforward narrative. It's fragmented. You'll find out at the end is what I come to call a mosaic, because I tried to make something where all the little pieces add up to a cohesive vibe or message. And in this case, the title being Continuum, it's about like the spectrum of emotions that I was feeling in regards to being creative and just how I was feeling with life at that point, which was very isolated, very creatively lonely, and just very like I really just couldn't get a grip on things at that time. But back to the shot. I like the symmetry of the lamp that I had in my apartment in this particular room. I just thought it looked really nice on camera, and I wanted to, again, I was thinking about the colors. Bringing in a hotter palette for this one was obviously a pretty easy choice. And I like just the shape of the cone right in the center. It's also kind of uncomfortable to be staring directly into a light bulb, which I also wanted to, again, bring a sense of discomfort with that one. So I did kind of skip to the next shot by accident. But this is actually the exhaust on the enclosure, or I guess it's a heat exhaust on the enclosure of the lamp, just like super out of focus. Similarly, I was just trying to look for something kind of otherworldly, and I just messed around, when looking through the viewfinder of the camera, just trying to look for, a way to show something abstract, I guess. I honestly don't remember how I ended up on this shot. I think it was probably just similar to the other one where I was looking at the lamp and thought it was a unique shape. I also like the shape of the bokeh here, how it's just, it's kind of unusual. And unless I told you what it was, you might not be able to guess what it was, which was the goal. I just really like this like pill kind of elongated light bokeh that it was giving off. I just thought it was very interesting, so I thought to include that. Okay, this shot. One of the ones is that I first envisioned in the conceptual phase, which was like an afternoon after I finished my shift at Cracker Barrel. I wanted to kind of, what I was thinking about was Inception, the scene where Leonardo DiCaprio gets pushed into the bathtub to basically try and wake him up. And I liked the idea of falling into the water as I fell through the title sequence, to kind of allude to the sense of I need to wake up to reality. I'm trying to reclaim this sense of normalcy. And the shot overall I really liked. Again, I like the symmetry of it. I tried to line up my face right in the middle of the frame. In case you're curious, Emily was helping me film this. She took the tripod and kind of leaned over me in the bathtub. I basically had my legs up like this and just rocked my torso back. I ended up going with this take, which you might not be able to tell super much in 120 frames, but I cranked my head on the bottom of the tub. So I was like, that's gonna have to be the final take. Some things I would want to change is, I think something that I struggled with given just the type of the bath it was, I would have gone with way more water. I would want to be fully submerged for this shot. But I think visually it turned out how I wanted. I think it gets across the ideas I wanted to get across. I think that's pretty much it for that. This one, again, was dealing with symmetry. I like the look. I mean, it's a sink plug. Also, an interesting color that I guess I kind of pulled out in post that I hadn't necessarily planned on, but this like reddish brown ring I thought was an interesting flavor for the palette, the overall palette. Kind of pinkish over here as well on the sides. Well, I guess it's more like beige. Also, I'm colorblind, so I could be completely wrong. I like the idea of this shot specifically for the kind of listing bubbles just kind of rolling around in the sink. Led to a sense of, in me when I saw the shot, led to a sense of kind of like a dizzying, like you're just caught in the eddy and you're floating along. And again, just kind of like a vibe of things not really making sense. You feel like you don't have control. The idea of just kind of, I don't know. I like the idea of the bubbles floating around. It made me think about how it feels sometimes when it feels like you can't control things and it just feels like you're floating through life and you don't have a lot of control, and sometimes you just got to surrender to the eddy and try and work through it. But that was some of the inspiration behind this shot. The following shot, okay, this is the only one that I think maybe in any of my work that's in reverse time. So that was really done for just the stylistic purpose of trying to bring a unique flavor to a shot that I didn't think I really had the budget to pull off of the original vision for. I'm actually squeezing an orange, I think kind of in front of the camera as it's looking up towards me. And I wanted it to kind of look like I was bleeding over the camera, just in a sense of sacrificing a piece of yourself or parts of yourself to bring a craft to life. Obviously, when I create my work, it comes from a very vulnerable place, and I wanted to try and depict how that could be painful and, dissociative, because obviously it doesn't look like I'm in pain. The idea was basically, again, to mess with the sense of time for the viewer, to make it a little bit uncomfortable. I'm not sure how well I pulled off this shot. I think there's maybe a couple things I would do different. Mainly, I would try and actually use like red dye or something, but I also was at a point where I just really needed to put something out, and I was satisfied with how this turned out. Also like the line of the part in the ceiling. Also, this was an unintended rack focus, but I ended up really liking it. Again, this was shot in 120 frames, and I moved my hand more towards center frame, and the autofocus caught onto my hand as the majority of the liquid goes back into my hand. So I thought that as well looked pretty cool. I was pretty happy with that. This is a shot, again, I was just feeling very vulnerable, and I wanted to depict that in the best way I could. And I'm fully naked in this shot. It did look a little out of place with the rest of the color palette to just like have a room and me be naked in it. So I ended up using like, in post, making it kind of like a negative, and then adding some grain and stuff to kind of make it match thematically with the rest of the footage. Again, playing with symmetry, I tried to be center frame, my frame taking up both sides kind of the center line. I was just trying to, that's sometimes how I felt. That's how I was feeling at the time. Very alone, very vulnerable, very, like I wasn't being seen, that sort of thing, which is what I was trying to bring across with this shot. Funnily enough, I feel like it doesn't make a lot of sense, but whenever in films I want to show that I'm vulnerable, I just like want to take my clothes off, because like, how vulnerable are you when people can see all of you? I don't know. It's maybe I don't know what that is, but that's the inspo behind that shot. This shot turned out to be one of my favorites of the whole thing. Was an accident that happened when I was panning to the shot after this. There's actually, it's a very out of focus edge of the sink, and the thing that's funny is I don't even know how the red, or maybe it's brown, it looks red to me, red got in there, but it also thematically kind of ties in, because it's red, with blood and like a murky image of what looks like kind of blood in a white void, I thought was kind of otherworldly looking. Just when I was going back through clips, I just really liked the look of kind of this wash of red coming up from the bottom of the frame, or coming up from the top of the frame down. I just thought it was a very interesting shot, that a very happy accident, that one. But it was in the process of shooting this next shot, which I tried again, with the Matrix as one of my influences. Tried to bring out the green in this shot a lot. It had The watch there, I think the actual face of it is green. The outside's kind of like a tarnished brass, and then it was a leather brown strap. I don't. Oh, it is. Okay, I definitely saw the secondhand tick. It's definitely operational. I honestly thought it was broken, but again, the sense of messing with the sense of time, like just submerging. Hi, Murphy. Oh, hi, buddy. Messing with the sense of just distorting this plane of understanding reality. You know, you're a watch representing time being submerged in something beyond itself. You know, basically this headspace of not understanding what's going on, what should be happening, that sort of thing. That's the inspiration behind this shot. This is actually a reflection. You could see it here a little bit. A reflection inside the frame of my glasses of the Colorado skyline back here, which is where I was living. And I really liked when I did this. It was getting late, and I wanted some type of reflection to kind of, you know, reference like a world that feels different than you know, the one you're living in, but it's also the same. You know, obviously pulling again from influences from things like The Matrix, but also things like I just find with mirrors and reflections that it can feel like a world of its own. Trying to think back about like old Disney animation, like Fantasia, Mickey walking through mirrors. Even like movies like Oculus, where things like exist in mirrors that aren't real. But I wanted to try and give the sense that there's a world beyond what I was feeling, just out of sight and in a dimension that I couldn't normally access, which if you've had a depressive episode, it definitely feels like you're not, almost like you're not in the same world as everyone else. But what I really particularly liked about this shot was this small flare of light here. I just really enjoyed the symmetry with that and the color. I don't usually work with like super warm color palettes. Overall, this was like a much more warm colored film, microfilm to my usual. I usually trend towards blues and greens and brown, I guess browns. But just because I think the look looks a little bit more cinematic. But I was very happy with this one. I think the reflections turned out nice. That was the inspiration behind this shot. This next one, I believe the last of the film here, is actually a Bluetooth indicator on a LED indicator on a Bluetooth headset that I put underneath a glass to try and distort it further. Again, messing with symmetry. I guess I had a particular affinity for circles in this one. My cat's messing with my camera bag. And my light went out at some point. Well, I intended to have this light on, which is probably bouncing off my glasses a bunch, but basically I like the idea of this circle and then this lonely blue light trying to basically flash and say, you know, I'm here if you're looking for me. Again, it's just kind of the loneliness I was feeling at the time. And I just wanted an isolated subject of a different color that I tried to bring in as many primary colors as I could, try and show the literal spectrum of color along with the idea of like the spectrum of time, and that was the inspiration for this shot. As it goes out here, I let that one linger for a little longer because the light blinking kind of felt more sad because it's just alone in this thing. I did update the text here, and then this is the first one, and then of course my branding as it currently is. I also updated that from my first iteration of this film. I also updated the resolution. I had previously done it in 1080p because the 120 frames per second sections are in full HD on my camera. I can't do 4K 120, but I upscaled it to basically match between the 4K clips, which weren't in slow motion, which were only a couple, and the slow motion resolution, so it's like quad HD-esque. So it should look a little sharper. The idea behind the mosaic, which I end up getting to with Accept Submit later, and I think 2020 or 2021, again, I mentioned, was just to make a cohesive thing out of a lot of broken parts. There isn't a narrative, essentially. It's just trying to immerse the viewer in the mindset that I was in at the time. And the light motif was, again, somewhat of a nod to the Matrix, but it also is something a little bit more general. I don't know why I felt compelled for this, but I just wanted the neon motif to continue into the symbology for the format of the piece as well. So labeling it a mosaic and having this light, which was an underscore in After Effects with glows and then messing with the opacity to make it flicker. I just really wanted to kind of have a lasting impression of what you just watched, as short as it was, that this kind of splash screen, if you will, would give that a lingering image in your mind of, as a representation of what you watched. This flickering light as it cuts to the credits, which was just my name because I did everything with this aside from the water shot, which Emily was gracious enough to help me with. But I think that about wraps it up. I hope you enjoyed. Sorry about some of the technical issues, but I will see you in the next one. I plan on doing this for another film or two, just because it's fun, and I hope you enjoy a look into the process that I took for this film, and I look forward to doing it again. So I'll see you next time.